Okay.
And I call this meeting to order at 7 p.m. Thank you. This meeting is held under the authority of legislation that authorizes remote and hybrid meetings until March 31st, 2023. Today's agenda was posted on the committee's page, and all votes will be taken by roll call vote. If there are any technical difficulties with Zoom, we will, and they're not solved in 5 minutes, the meeting will be ended and all matters on the agenda will be carried over to our next meeting. The minutes for tonight's meeting will be taken by committee member Adrian. Thank you, Adrian, for doing that. At this point, I'd like to ask committee members to indicate that they are present when I call their name. Deb Adelman.
Present.
Adrian Boardman.
Present.
Tracy Hansen.
Present.
Dorcas Miller. John Soden.
Present.
And Nat Welch is present. With 6 members present, we have a quorum. Our first order of business is to review and approve the minutes from the November 10th meeting. Those minutes were sent out to members today. Are there any questions, comments, or edits that need to be made?
No.
Move the minutes be accepted.
Second?
Second.
Okay. Ms. Adelman?
Approve.
Ms. Boardman?
Approve.
Ms. Hansen?
Approve.
Ms. Miller? Mr. Soden?
Aye.
Mr. Welch? Aye. The minutes are approved by roll call vote unanimously. I'd like to turn the floor over to Marcia Rasmussen, Director of Planning and Land Management, to provide her monthly update.
I think I better sit over here. I'm sorry,
Okay.
people. But I'm still admitting different people as they become available. All right, it's short update since it's winter, and we won't be seeing a lot of construction, but phase 2A and 2D, the select board did approve and adopt the recommendations of the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail Advisory Committee to accept the common rules for the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail as initiated by the Friends of the BFRT at their meeting on November 14th. Phase 2B, the completion date is expected to be extended. It hasn't been formally extended, but they're expecting it to be May of 2023, the end of May, to allow installation of the cedar fence, landscaping, and top course of asphalt on the Acton portion of the trail. Concord's portion has been completed, but it has not been finalized, or they haven't signed off on it. For phase 2C, the ordering of materials needed for the implementation of the short-term improvements to Junction Park have been delayed to early December. I had some other priorities that needed to be addressed in November. And so hopefully that we'll be able to get things installed in April as needed. And then the third meeting of the stakeholders interested in the Concord Reformatory Cemetery project is scheduled for Monday, December 5th in the morning. If anybody's interested in attending, let me know and I can forward the Zoom link to you.
Thank you.
The last half mile, phase 2C and 2D in Sudbury, I had a brief paragraph from the Town of Sudbury Director of Planning and Community Development, Adam Bouchain. And he says he provided information about the submission deadline for construction bids being in early September. 6 to 7 weeks to review and select contractor, which is AA Will Corporation. They've had an initial meeting with Mass DOT on November 9th. And right now, AA Will is working to check pre-construction vegetation clearing, permitting boxes with the Conservation Office in Sudbury before they can even begin clearing that vegetation. And I understand from our member Dorcas Miller that they have been out doing a lot of survey work and they're talking about removing the rails and timbers in the very near future. They want to conduct the initial vegetation clearing during the 2022-2023 winter, but that might not start until late December or early January. And we'll have more information as the contractor gets closer to actual field work. And then late today, we learned that the purchase of the 3.5 miles of the CSX rail corridor by the town of Framingham has been completed. So it looks like the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail will someday actually go from Lowell to Framingham. And that's
Yay.
very exciting.
Very exciting, yes.
And that's my update for this month.
Okay. Any questions from the members?
I just had, sorry, I just had one question. Let me just go on camera just so everybody can see me. I apologize. Hi, everybody. My question is, when we communicate with towns like Sudbury, or Acton for that matter, do we communicate with a similar group as this, or do we communicate with someone at your end, Marcia? In other words, does Sudbury have an advisory committee like we do? Does Acton, or no, they do it differently?
Acton does not, yeah.
And for me, I only communicate, I communicate primarily with my counterpart in Sudbury. However, there is one member of the Sudbury community who has provided information in the past. And so I do communicate with that individual.
And in Acton, there's a woman, I think she's part of Natural Resources or their equivalent. Planning
director,
Right.
Kristen Guichard.
Right, who you would communicate
Yes.
with Acton related things. Deb, there is a group as I think it's called not an advisory committee, but anyway, they got a different name that is active in Sudbury and was very active to get everything moved forward. John Drobinski is their chair, and he and I have corresponded quite a bit over the last 2 years. And in fact, one of the questions I have,
Not in your official capacity.
not in my official capacity,
Okay,
right?
thank you.
Exactly. Thank you. But there is, I think, some need for us to perhaps sit in on some of their sessions as a non-resident. And if the committee's okay, I would invite John or someone from his side to come in and keep us up to date on what's happening, given that we have the half mile that we share in this contract. Not to get in the way of Marcia's work officially, but just to keep communications open. So I have mentioned that to John.
Okay. Thank you.
But Marcia, I do have a question, which is where they're going to start. You said, as for where this initial work will start, we should have more information once the contractor gets closer to actual field work. Is it possible for us to ask the contractor to consider starting on the north side?
You may request, but it is the contractor has the authority, the responsibility for programming their work.
The whole thing.
And so they get to decide and determine.
Right.
We do not.
So first, I just want to ask the members if there's a sense that we want to at least put a request into the contractor to start on the concrete side. And my personal, taking off my chair hat, my personal feeling is I'd love to complete the concrete piece as early as we possibly can. So that we can all take advantage of that connection. But what do other members think? Just I'm looking for thoughts.
Nat, I thought maybe I'm misremembering, but and Marcia, you can help clarify. But I think that when we discussed that prior, it was mentioned that like this like step one will be done through like the whole length of the trail, and like step two would be done the whole length of the trail. That they wouldn't necessarily deploy the resources just to do the conquered portion. I don't know if the request is to have them rethink that, if that's what you're suggesting. But I remember that we discussed before, like even if they cleared the vegetation in the conquered portion first, they wouldn't then move on to the next step until like all of it was cleared the whole way down.
Right.
So I guess I'm trying to understand. I guess it'd be great to have the conquered portion completed first, but what does that really mean based on how the project is going to be executed?
Going to be finished. Okay. All right.
And I don't know, Marcia, if you maybe have more insight based on like how the conquered portion was done. Like, was it done in chunks or?
Adrian, how do you define it is exactly correct. They will do one thing first, which is clearing, and then they would do the second thing, which might be doing some grading or installing stormwater management along the entire length, and then they would do the next piece. They don't break down and start something new each time if they can avoid it.
Right.
Unfortunately, we were having to deal with that in the phase 2B portion because of this issue with screening the police horse barracks barn, or horse barn. So that's something unique to the 2B project, and is not typical of a DOT contract.
Right, because they have this one small portion that's holding up the completion. Okay. Any other, Adrian, thanks for the reminder. Any other comments from members? Any thoughts? Okay. I'll put that puppy to bed in my head for a while. Okay, the next item for business is, find where I am here. I'm a little far ahead, sorry. Is a discussion on member terms. I sent out to everybody a listing that I got from, I think, the town manager or the clerk, that had everybody's term and when it ends. And I just wanted people to be aware of how long you're going to be here. And what this means is that in 2023, there are 4 members who potentially will roll off. So one of the things that as chairs, we want to make sure we have enough people on board. It's, as I understand it, we can ask to extend terms if anyone would like their term extended. I'm certainly willing to volunteer to do that. And for the folks who leave later, we'll have to worry about that until next year. Any thoughts or questions on this email that I sent?
Nate?
Yeah.
This is John. There's an error on mine. I'm in the 6th year right now. I will complete my 2nd term this May.
Okay. All right. So they have the record.
I suspect the record got screwed up. If you remember, Richard and I had to take care of a little matter when I re-upped and the paperwork didn't make its way through the system.
Right.
But yes, I will have completed 2 full terms come May.
And are you looking to retire with full benefits?
I was led to believe with the earlier board, the first board I served on, when this issue came up, that 3rd terms are frowned upon. But whether they're frowned upon or not, I've just been dragooned into a 3-year term on my condo board. So I think I'll run this one out, and then I'll spend some time worrying about planters around the condo, since I have some experience about that now.
With planners? Okay, good. All right. So we should be prepared that in 2023 you'll roll off.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. That's helpful. Thank you. And we will miss your august presence, but change happens, right? Okay. We have one other item that we need to follow up on. And Deb, do you mind if I just bring up your question, your situation?
I mean, I'm happy to speak for myself, if that's okay
Good.
with you.
Go for it. Yes, go for it.
Although all the paperwork isn't final, Lord willing, on the 12th of December, I will officially be a resident of Sudbury. I'm moving all of 1/3 of a mile over the border from Concord. I can walk to Concord. However, my zip code officially will be Sudbury.
And you'll be near the trail too, as I recall.
I'm right on White Pond now. I have even more, familiarity with all of the White Pond issues. So even though technically I'm nearby for purposes of this meeting, I will relinquish my Concord residency in January.
Right.
And so my understanding is perhaps I can finish out my term, but perhaps not.
Marcia, any guidance on that?
My understanding is that no, she will not be able to
Okay,
finish out the term,
okay,
but I can confirm that with the town clerk tomorrow.
okay. And let's just, could we, is it not apropos to ask the select board if we can extend her to the end or not?
No, it's not.
Okay,
No,
all
you
right,
can't.
okay,
If
Oh,
you
hi,
don't
Karen.
live in town, hi, if you don't live in town, you cannot be on the board.
okay.
Okay.
We have clarity. All right, so I think then one of the things we need to do is think, first of all, well, when do you officially become a resident when you move, right? Because you'll still be a resident of Concord,
Yeah,
because you
I
haven't
won't.
moved yet.
That's right. It'll be on or about January 20th.
All right. Well, we may or may not see you at our next meeting then.
That's right.
Depending if you move. All right. All right. So we'll have to think about what we do with that. Well, Deborah, officially, thank you for your service to this point. It means we're also going to need to figure out how to fill in the safety subcommittee. So if other members could think about whether or not they want to be on the safety subcommittee, that would be helpful. Once people could think about it. I don't know if anybody has any inkling right now, but in the next week or two, if you could let either Adrian or me know, we want to fill in that spot on the safety subcommittee. Okay. All right. Next item of business is Junction Park update. I want to let the committee know that I sent a copy of the email to all committee members. I met with Jean Goldsberry, who's chair of Commission on Disabilities, to get a better handle on kind of what their thinking was with regard to the planters in the pathways in the park. I shared with her our thinking and what members of our committee had said about that, and she talked a bit about what with their group were thinking. She said there were some differences of opinion on it, and so in the end, and this is essentially what Marcia suggested, because Marcia always knows the way things are going to turn out anyway. But the thought was to do a dry run with the planters, right? When they come in, actually gather at the park, an empty planter, please,
Yes.
not filled with dirt, and kind of see what they look like, and as a group, kind of maybe try. Walking around them, have a couple of people trying to cross at the same time, see what happens, and do a live test. And then after that, we can all decide as a committee whether or not they feel like they'll create more of a safety hazard or that they'll be okay and good enough for the short term. So that was what we came away with, and I wanted to inform the select board on that. So I sent this note, but I want to ask the committee members, because I don't represent the committee, but I was talking with her about these issues. Any comments, questions, thoughts on this note?
I have one.
Yes.
I've opposed the planters and I continue to oppose the planters because I like green space in the park. And I feel that the planters take away from the green space. They're just one more distraction. And I love the park the way it is. I would really do some things to change the grass that the town has planted there, which is horrible. But I really think that the park is supposed to be a quiet, beautiful green space in a pretty busy area. And I think planters just make it busy.
Right, the ones in the pathways. Right. Other thoughts, comments?
Yeah, I'll just share. I like the idea of trying it out and seeing how it works and then going from there.
Okay.
I think we've done enough discussing, and it's good if we can visually see it in the space.
Yeah.
I think my comment is just it'd be interesting if we could think ahead about how we're going to make the decision on site. I can imagine that if there's so many different opinions, if we're just talking about it in theory, even when we get there in person, yes, I think it's going to be helpful to see things, but I can imagine it's not going to be an overwhelming consensus one way or another. It's probably still going to be kind of a split crowd. So I don't know, just giving some thought to how those decisions are going to be made when we're doing these live tests, because I don't think it's going to be probably clear cut. We're probably still going to be in this ambiguous kind of in between, right? Some for, some against. So just something to think about.
Right. So are you suggesting that we do this on-site thing and then we withdraw and we meet at a regular time following that, and we say, here's what we think. We have a deliberation in a formal way. Is that what you're suggesting?
I guess I'm just saying it'd be wise, I think, for us to think about how we're going to determine whether these tests are successful or not. Because I can imagine just getting into further deliberations, and maybe just putting some, or maybe Marcia, you've seen how this has been done in other committees. But I just think having like a thoughtful approach before we get into that process may just serve us well. So we know, after this, are we continuing with the planters, are we removing them? But we just kind of know how that decision is made after these tests are done. Right. Like, is it a simple vote? Is it more live discussion like this? Just again, I don't know the answer, but just thinking about how this process may play out.
I think
Look, this isn't our decision. This is the reason we elect select boards. It's their decision.
Right.
That's a good point. So then maybe it's just the Bruce Freeman Advisory Committee coming up with our response to the tests and then presenting it to them as our group.
We're giving them feedback.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
Yeah. And I think, Adrian, your point is well taken, that we should at least think through, are we going to hold a vote right there at the planters, after we do it, or are we going to wait? And I think that, speaking personally, I fall on the side of with Dorcas on, I still don't like them. And at the same time, I think it's important that we create the space for people to see them and have a conversation. Mm-hmm. And then we can, John, as you said, we can advise the town on what we want to do. So I think that's, so when we do an invitation for this thing, which I assume will be probably closer to March and April, we still have time to talk about it. So let's just take an action item that at an upcoming meeting to just kind of propose we meet at this time, this is what we do. Then we come back and we have a deliberation as a committee and we make a recommendation, or we advise the town what we think. So I think that makes sense.
And it was always meant to be a short-term solution. So my understanding was we meant for it to be tried out essentially we didn't ever say how long the short-term solution would be, but that was my understanding, is that we tried out for months or whatever the period of time was and get feedback and see if it was working or not. So I think I don't even know if we have to have a meeting. I think if it's working, then we probably won't hear anything. And if it's not working, I'm sure we'll get a lot of feedback and know immediately.
So this is trying out the short-term solution, which might be 2 or 3 years of this before we can convince the town.
We didn't really say, but I think if it was a real failure, we would know pretty fast.
Right.
I did include in the capital improvement budget, or requests anyway. I haven't seen the final to know if it's been approved, but a request for $75,000 that would include funds to evaluate the success or failure of the short-term solution and the preliminary design of the long-term solution. Right. And that's for fiscal year 2025, which would be the summer of 2024.
Okay.
Into the spring of 2025.
Okay. All right, that's great. Other member comments? And if none, I'm just going to call on a member of the public. Barbara, you had your hand up regarding this topic.
Yes, since we're talking about Junction Park, this is not about the planters. This is about people finding their way, heading north primarily or south, finding their way around the station house and points north or south. In Chelmsford, there was an issue with a street crossing. People weren't quite sure where to go. So they took the dragonfly that we have used on our granite markers and they stenciled it on the walkway. I mean, it didn't last forever, of course, but they stenciled it along the walkway. So you just follow the dragonfly. And I'm quite sure we don't want to stencil things on the bricks, but particularly heading south, we could use the dragonflies. What particularly concerns me for its inaccuracy and its inelegancy is that green and white sign that says bike route with an arrow. It is aesthetically unpleasing and it isn't accurate. And I would like for the committee to consider an alternative way to direct people around the station house. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Barbara. Any other comments from committee members?
I think the planters were supposed to help with that, right? Isn't that how they were originally designed?
So not the round planners, but there are planners in the plan that Marcia put together that should help indicate where people should turn and where they should go. But I think this is a broader issue. Dorcas, prior to the meeting, mentioned working in a different part of West Concord and finding all these people, all these bicyclists showing up on the street, not knowing where to go. I mean, you should probably relate it.
Working in the Mandaloni garden.
Right.
Yeah.
And these bikers
were lost.
Yeah. So this probably is a deeper conversation as we move towards implementing some of the short-term items, thinking about how people do wayfinding. I'm not sure we want to get into it tonight, but I'd like to reserve it as a topic for January or February. Sound good? Okay, next item is the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail updated map. I sent a copy, and I think, Marcia, you can bring it up, of the current, I don't know, is this the official map? I know that the Friends have been actively involved in mapping. Barbara, I know you have a deep interest in it. This is a map that's on the website, and it indicates both the kind of the full extent of the trail, through Concord, and then also the unique aspect of going around Junction Park. And our GIS expert in town, Jill Moonheron, I know is retiring, but is continuing to do some work with the town. And she has said she'd be happy to help us put a kind of the next map together. So what I wanted to do is to share with members what's here today. And if there are any, kind of comments on the map that we can start to gather from members about what might they add or change, use this as a gathering point. Marcia, how would this kind of flow once we got input and so on? Is this something that you would run or what?
It would be great to have input from the committee on different pieces if they wanted to, if they want me to send out or if they can print out something and send it back to me, or just verbally describe what they see as changes needed. Since we're changing the pedestrian zone piece, we might say add the language that's being proposed for the signs that are Bruce in Junction Park for West Concord, or some changing the different pieces of it. That would be the easiest thing, and then I can work with Jill to make sure that it gets implemented.
You got a draft, and
yeah.
Okay, that's good.
Is it too early to put in the new park that we have now that's just over the pedestrian bridge? It's going to be partly town, partly Land Conservation Trust, partly, I don't know, Sudbury Valley.
Oh, I mean, right across the Assabet?
It's right beside the Assabet.
Yeah, it's that,
Is it too soon to put that in?
It probably won't be the Assabet River Bluff project.
Yeah.
I mean, it might be too soon because they haven't yet developed the path that they want to put through there, but, I can talk to Delia about adding it, yeah.
So the indication of the last half mile, we'll probably need to change the date on that since it's not going to be finished in 23.
Or we might put the whole 2023 to 2025
Right.
timeframe.
Yeah. And then obviously we have,
Current, and we can call it current construction.
yeah, well, can we say, current construction. And then on the north end, can we now say that that's, I mean, it's not officially open, but can we map it as open?
For the purposes of this map,
Map,
yes,
yeah,
I think
okay.
so.
Okay, that would be great.
And over in the White Pond area, there's going to be a series of trails. Should those be penciled in somehow? Yeah, I don't think they've quite figured out where the
They haven't figured out where yet, so
Yeah.
I don't think so. We need to do survey before we can
Yeah.
start doing that, I think. What trails are you talking about?
Well, the trails that go behind White Pond, down to the cove and all that sort of stuff. There's a whole network of trails, which are town trails.
Right.
Trails Committee has developed it. It's very nice. And we have lots of people walking on them now.
But unfortunately, they're crossing over private property, and so we don't want to make it, we don't want to put it on this map right now
Okay, so
until
you
until
still haven't
it's,
figured a way in.
Yeah.
until we have redefined the trail network access over the state right of way. I don't think it's appropriate to
Right.
add that.
But we're thinking about this idea of other trails
Mhm.
that might be added. So maybe, the old rifle range has a trail that goes out, that goes through it.
It's going to make the map. This
Very
is
busy,
the
yeah.
Freeman Rail Trail.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'm just.
No, I think I thought I'd bring it up, and then I think you're right. It probably gets pretty crowded. I think the other thing is, can we remove the ice cream sign from the key? Do we need that?
Yes, we need that.
We need that. Okay, because it's,
Don't you? Whenever I go for a ride on the rail trail, I have to stop for ice cream somewhere along the way.
okay, all right. I'm fine. I'm fine with that. I'm good.
No, you can remove it if you wish. I'm just saying.
Well, yeah, that's good. It's good. Other member comments on the map for now?
Yeah, I just had, I'm probably a broken record, but I've become more aware that we have bikers, we have pedestrians, we have people in wheelchairs. I'm just asking the question, when it says pedestrian zone, is that inclusive enough of wheelchairs? They're not dismounting. Are they disinvited from this portion of the trail?
Deborah, did you, I suggested that we add the language that we have proposed for the Junction Park signs,
Okay,
which
great.
is
Yeah.
respect,
Yeah, whatever.
holding people accountable or something along those lines.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, I just want to make sure that those in wheelchairs are fully welcome. Thank you.
Okay. Can I ask if any members have other thoughts as I look at this? I did send a copy out. Please send them into Marcia. And we can incorporate the points for a draft in the next month or two. Barbara, you have your hand raised. I know you're a mapophile.
No, actually, this is another issue. It may have to do with age, but identifying restrooms is a very popular item, especially with our, the Friends have a map for phase 1 and 2A. And the bathrooms, whether they're seasonal, whether they're porta potties. And I know that Giroux has a bathroom. Now, I assume that it might be seasonal, but I don't know that.
Yes, it will be seasonal.
So what we've done on the ones that are seasonal is we just say, we put the little restroom icon and then we just say seasonal.
Okay. There are no public restrooms, are there, in West Concord right now?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Not yet. And for the old people who need them, like me, have to go buy a cup of coffee.
Marsha, I'm just curious, is the not yet in reference to there will be or just there aren't currently?
There aren't any right now. And we have tried a couple of different paths. Whenever something is redeveloped, we've talked to those property owners about the possibility of providing public restrooms as part of their design or construction. And we have a couple of people who've been open to the idea, but they haven't gone forward with redevelopment of their properties at this time. A couple that we have talked to, we couldn't move fast enough as a town to make it work for them. So it's been a challenge. It took 100 years to get the visitor center in Concord Center. I'm hoping it takes less time for West Concord, but I can't guarantee that.
Yeah, no, appreciate that. I was taken by the comment, so I didn't know if that meant that you knew something was coming. So I
We've been
appreciate
looking
that.
and we've been thinking about, and I love the portable restroom facility that they've used at White Pond. And I've been thinking, is there a location in the commuter parking area where we could install that on a permanent basis or something? And we haven't had that conversation yet.
Nat, the
Yes.
other thing I'm a little curious about is the charging station symbol on Route 2.
Yeah, I have a question mark there as well.
Okay.
It's super secret, Barbara. You're not supposed to know about it.
It's certainly a well-kept secret. Looks like
Yes.
it's out where the farm road.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah. All right. Any update from the safety subcommittee? Deb?
Yeah, sure. Just give me 1 second, please.
Yep.
So this is obviously just an update unofficially with respect to the meeting that we as a safety subcommittee just held on November 15th. First of all, we did acknowledge what Marsha already mentioned, that the uniform rules were approved. And so we're very grateful to that step because it does really create that consistency that we've all been looking for. Then we really got into the discussion about not only the principles, which we had discussed at our last meeting, but then the scope of the safety subcommittee. You may recall at our last meeting that we talked about that our principles are based in common sense, courtesy, and that we had identified those series of principles. But then once we have the principles, the question was, well, what are we here to do? And so again, this has been discussed because of how the process works. We have to wait until the minutes are approved, and then it will be brought forward to this committee. We had recommended that the scope of the safety subcommittee includes making recommendations, not determinations, to y'all for speed limits, efforts to increase safety awareness, and management of e-technology. And what does that mean exactly? It's fairly broad reaching. If I start with the last item, e-technology, there was really a recognition that this is no longer about e-bikes. It's about e-anything. It's becoming ubiquitous, and we feel that technology will be changing extremely rapidly. And so one of the items in scope for this committee is for us to make recommendations to this committee, who then would make it to the town, how we propose addressing this rapidly changing technology. Then working my way backwards in terms of safety awareness, we further discussed that what's in scope is, again, not determining but making recommendations for things like education campaigns in schools, educational campaigns in the town itself. Who are the audiences? What could that include? What are methods that we think are helpful? And then lastly, and really most fraught with discussion, the issue of speed limits. And we recognize that that was in our scope. So we did second and unanimously approve that as the scope. There were other items that were discussed. I'm going to wait for those to come out when we have our next subcommittee, but I think we're in a really good place with the safety subcommittee. There will be, to Nat's point, a fair amount of work that is needed in the new year, but I do think it's not so much work as it's an opportunity. I think that implicit in the scope of the subcommittee was maintaining contact with the other groups that are doing similar activities, which we know and have learned are working on the same things we are. And so I think it will behoove Concord and the Rail Trail Advisory Committee and the Safety Subcommittee to stay in touch with other towns to learn how are they addressing safety. We've learned, for example, that Mass Bikes has a collaboration site where people are posting some of their videos, how they're addressing it. So I think, yes, there's a lot of work to be done, but there's a huge amount of opportunity and I think a strong commitment.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Deb. And thank you to the other members of the committee.
And the next safety subcommittee meeting is Monday at 5 p.m. Via Zoom, and that's been posted already. So,
yeah, thank you.
The phase 2D scheduling item was my question about whether they could work on the north end of the trail first. So that has been answered, and we'll move on to the last item on the committee business part of the schedule, which is the Mass Trails Grant program. Deb, I think you sent this actually to me, so I wanted to share it with the committee and see if anybody had any ideas with regard to things that might fall under this area of grants that we might want to think about. And I think, Marcia, you're the one that does all the heavy grant work. But are there things that are listed here in this, the kinds of things that they have? Sorry,
I don't know.
I thought I sent you a copy of
You
it.
did, but I just didn't bring it down.
Yeah, that might be useful for us to think about. It's a February 1st deadline for submission. So I don't know how much money is available.
Well, it can be significant. The Mass Trails grants have provided money for the Assabet River pedestrian bridge.
Wow.
And for the, I think they provided some funding to the purchase of the Assabet River Bluff project. So this might be an opportunity to work with the town of Acton to create that path
To the
fields
fields.
over at School Street Fields.
Okay.
It means crossing the Neshoba Brook in another location, but that I actually walked out there and was thinking, gee, if we could do a pathway over here and here, we could maybe make this happen. So
we could at least maybe get funds for
Yeah.
the study. So, okay. So that would be one item. Do other members have any like projects or ideas, big ideas that we might think about using it to apply for a grant?
Marsha or Nat, can you just elaborate on the School Street fields? Is that by?
It would be by the Route 2 bridge. If, as you're approaching the Route 2 bridge from Concord, there is a small depression just before the woods fencing starts.
Mm-hmm.
And if you were to go between that small depression and the fencing, you can approach some of the the remnants of the railroad bridges that were there at the time. If we could create a small, but we'd have to cross over that water body, the Neshoba Brook, and possibly one other, and then cross over Department of Corrections land and some other sites. But we could create a path that would allow Acton residents to use the rail trail to get across Route 2 and over to the School Street playing fields. And that was one of we weren't able to incorporate it into the design for the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail because we didn't have the permission from the abutting property owners, and people thought it was adding too much complexity to the bridge design. But there's still interest on the part of Acton, and so having the two communities work together on it might be a way of getting the grant. It would increase, working together, it increases our chances of getting the grant.
And so we would ask for a grant for a feasibility study.
Or in combination with Acton.
I meant the Royal Acton.
Start with a feasibility study and go from there.
And Adrian, when you drive out, you hit the rotary and you drive out. When you go underneath the Bruce Freeman Bridge on Route 2, and then you start to rise up, on the left is where all the playing fields are. That's the School Street fields.
Yeah, I can picture it now that Marcia had mentioned it. I just wasn't orienting myself to.
No,
School
I
Street.
did find in my research on the topic, the 25% plan actually had an example of a ramp coming off of the bridge and hugging along. The idea was to hug along Route 2 and then go into School Street. Barbara and the Friends sponsored a conversation with Acton about this topic a few months ago. And so there has been some discussion about it with Acton, but I think the next step would be for us to reach out to Acton and see if they're interested in maybe applying for a grant. But I think that's that's a juicy size project, and a feasibility study might be a good thing for them to fund because it does benefit both towns. It hits the recreational piece, and I know that
there are a lot of runners who would use that.
Right. And the Department of Corrections has already indicated that the land that they lease to Acton, they'd be willing to consider discussing having a path, a more permanent path go through. So the groundwork has been laid. So this might be a great opportunity.
What about possible entry from the rail trail to the new middle school?
Yeah.
New middle school.
Now you're talking my language, Dorcas. I like it. Okay. Again, a feasibility study. Does everyone know what that is? Okay.
Mhm.
And the access to the White Pond Reservation lands trails would be another study that could be added for consideration.
I have no idea how complicated these grants are. Have you ever done one of these, I assume?
I have not, but my staff have, so I can talk to them.
Okay. So I'm willing to follow up with you, Marcia. If the members are okay, I'm happy to talk with Marcia about doing some of this. If anybody else wants to join me and kind of see how we could help, if that would be a help, Marcia, let me know. Is anybody interested now?
Nat, I would be.
Okay. All right, Adrian. I assume if it's White's Pond, you'd be interested in,
Or middle school.
well, the middle school,
Middle
right?
school's kind of
Okay.
hot.
Okay.
Well, I just see those kids coming up
Right, yeah.
up they come up that hill in front of the middle school. And there's a lot of them.
Yeah, there's a lot of people. I guess my fourth one is my perennial, let's get trail counters, but I'll that'll be fourth in the list. All right. Okay, so path to the School Street playing fields, feasibility study to do a path to the new Concord Middle School building, access to the White Pond Reservation, and trail counters would be the four ideas that we might consider. Okay. Okay, and I'll follow up, Adrian, with you and Dorcas, and we'll figure out how to coordinate with Marcia so we're not a pain in the ass, but we're actually being productive and helpful. Okay, any other members, questions or comments
In this one?
No, yeah, well, on this, yes, and then, if there aren't any, then in general, any other member questions or comments? Okay, and then, I'm gonna open this up now to public, and Barbara, did you raise your hand again?
I did raise my hand again.
Oh, good, okay, we call it Barbara Pike, address please, just so we get it officially.
118 Border Road.
Thank you, Ms. Pike.
There's been some interest in gardening out by the prison between the rail trail and the fence. There's what I assume is an impromptu, unofficial pollinator garden that someone's put a lot of work into and put a lot of work in keeping it watered all summer out there. And it looks like somebody has planted some milkweed. It seems like a good place for some beautification. It certainly gets a lot of sun. I just happened to have been walking on the Assabet River Rail Trail in Maynard and talking to this guy who was working on a little pocket park. And he said that they had planted 1,000 daffodil bulbs in Maynard. And I was wondering what it would take to think daffodils. Because the right-of-way should be 160 feet or 60 feet wide. So which means it should theoretically be 30 feet from the center line, I mean, assuming. So there should be some land there that is in the right-of-way and it's not prison land. I just don't know if there was any interest with the advisory committee to follow up on some flowers or some pollinator gardens are a big thing. That would be a really good spot for milkweed because no one would care if it's spread. So I just don't know what your thoughts would be on that.
So officially, Marcia, what's the town's position on planting alongside, doing things like that? Is there a position?
I think if the Rail Trail Advisory Committee wanted to include this in a future grant application for funding from the CPC, and you had people who were willing to do it,
Right,
and maintain it or manage it in some fashion,
Yeah.
I think that the town would be open to that.
okay. And what about the Green Thumbs? Would they be interested in doing something along it?
Green thumbs sort of have the hands full.
Okay, okay. I just,
You never know.
yeah,
There might
okay.
be somebody that there's some people, some of the new people in Green Thumbs have a lot of energy. So might possibly work.
Okay. I think something, go ahead, Barbara.
I'm thinking that we shouldn't put this on the sidelines with a funding issue. That if it were feasible, possible, I don't even know what the soil is like out there. And it certainly wouldn't have to be 1,000 daffodils. I mean, that guy whoever he was, did the pollinator garden all on his own. So
Where is this pollinator garden?
it's out by the prison wall. It's not
I haven't noticed it.
pretty far back from the trail. It's out by the prison wall. I don't know if it's not particularly visible right now because the plantings have died down. But
Okay,
I raised it just to find out if it were feasible,
The town is responsible for the railroad, the rail trail, and either side. And all activity along the rail trail, we have referred to the town manager with the advisory committee providing input and recommendation. So if the committee were in support of pursuing this, I think you should take a vote to do that. You
Right.
may want to think about it and vote on it at your next meeting.
yeah, I mean, I think,
Because I don't know all of the parameters or the issues that might come up. We can't dig too deeply because of some other issues, but it's something I'd have to think about.
no, I think what you're saying is, Barbara, thank you for bringing it up. It certainly is something that would, fall under the purview of us saying we think it's a good idea or it's not. And maybe we should do a bit more digging into, well, who would take accountability, what would be the, what's allowed, what's not allowed, so on and so forth. I mean, it feels like it would be, we'd have to tread that ground carefully before we cultivated it. But I think it's worth bringing up at another meeting, and doing a little bit of groundwork before then to kind of understand what the boundaries are, not just of the rail trail right of way, but what we want to do. And if throwing seeds out there, do we want to have somebody actually be accountable for taking care of it? Which brings a whole nother set of issues to us. But you have a comment or no?
No, I'm waiting until public comment. I mean,
Okay.
something at the end.
Okay. Thank you, Barbara, for bringing that up. I see Karen Smith. Could you announce yourself and provide your address? Oh, it's not Karen.
This is Jonathan Smith. I'm using Karen's computer.
Okay.
I'm
Welcome,
on
Jonathan.
Upland Road in West Concord.
Okay.
This might, thank you for your time, first of all. And this might be small potatoes for you. But basically, I just wanted to let you know that the crossing lights at Old Marlborough Road for the rail trail are not working properly. The push button or the camera, it all depends on what day you go over, you cross. One or the other is not working, or
Right.
Both are not working, or it's hard to predict what's going to work on either side. So I don't know if this is something the safety subcommittee wants to tackle, because this is a public safety issue. I cross it at least 4 days a week on my bike, and so I'd like to see it, addressed.
So thank you for the comment, Marcia.
John, the town is very much aware of this issue, and the Concord Public Works Engineering Division has informed us, or has let me know, that there are a couple of issues out there. It's difficult to get we've had some problems with the lights itself. We can't get the replacement parts because of supply chain issues, and we don't have enough sun in that location to keep the solar panels activated or recharging. And so they are looking at alternatives to doing the flashing beacons right now. They haven't come up with anything new, but both the public safety officer and the Concord Public Works Engineering Division are aware of this situation and are working on it, but haven't come up with a solution yet.
Okay, thank you. One other little tidbit in this is that when we contacted the public safety officer and Public Works about this on August 2nd, so it's 4 months ago, we were told that they were on it, they knew about it, and it would be rectified soon. And they would also put a sign, maybe it's kind of like a crosswalk sign in the road, to let drivers, automobile drivers, know that there's a cross there, and so it's just one other little, I don't want to say barrier, but just a visual that alerts drivers to, people, pedestrians and bicyclists crossing there. So, but that sign appeared one day, and then a couple of days later, it was gone. And so I'd just like to encourage you, or encourage them, to maybe up their game a little bit and just try to make it a little safer while the lights are not working properly. So thank you for your time.
Okay.
Thank you, Jonathan, for bringing this up.
I assume that they have considered lopping off some branches from trees so that you can get more light in there.
I don't know. Yeah. We can circle back and get some more information on it. Okay. Terry Ackerman, I see your hand raised.
Hi, thank you, Nat. I just wanted to thank Deborah Adelman for all her service on the board and the safety committee, and we'll miss you. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry.
Yeah. Yeah, we will miss, but I know we'll see Deb around town because she likes Concord. So,
Yep.
Any other, Judy Perrin? Did you have any comments? Nope, okay,
Sorry,
Other-
I'm muted. No, I have no comments.
okay, thank you.
I have one more
Dorcas,
thing
yes.
I want to talk about. I'm wondering if we should write a letter to the town manager about the park near Warner's Pond, that it be open when the bridge opens. And that should, I think, take a lot of the pressure off of Junction Park. People coming from Acton are going to get tired after they go over that bridge. I think they might stop at Warner's Pond. And I would like to have that park completely open to bicycles
By May of
by
next year,
May.
yeah.
So I'm wondering if we should write a letter or anything.
Well, I'm happy to, I mean, you may have an answer, but
I
I
don't.
don't think you do. But I'm happy to write a letter to the town manager and just, an email, just query what's happening, and then I can report back to the
I really
committee.
think that's a very significant issue, and I think that will really help with the Junction Park issue.
Okay,
I think people will stop there, have a picnic, and go back to Acton.
okay. So I don't feel like we need a vote. I'm happy to just do some probing for the committee, and then, I'll come back in January and report back what I found, or if it's interesting, I'll just copy all the members, with an email. Okay. Okay, any other business? Awesome. The next safety committee meeting, as Marcia said, I just have it down here, is December 5th at 5 p.m. And please see the committee website for the agenda and times and connection. The next meeting of this committee will be shifting to our late Thursday in January. I can't remember if it's 3rd or 4th, but January 26th, 2023 is our next official Bruce Freeman meeting at 7 p.m. Here, barring any major snowstorms or other weather events, but I know Dorcas and I will be here. And I'd like to, before we adjourn, I'd like to thank all the members of the committee for the hard work. Marcia and her team for making 2022 successful. Thanks to Terry on the select board for keeping us in line. And I'd like to wish everyone a really happy holiday, and we will see all of you next year, if not before, around town. Can I have a motion to close the meeting?
Motion to close, motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Thank you. Second,
Second,
a roll call now. Deb,
Agree.
Adrian,
Aye.
Tracy,
Aye.
Dorcas, John,
aye.
and Nat says aye. We have adjourned the meeting as of 8:02. Have a great evening. Thank you all.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.